Hi, everyone. Welcome to A Word with Kellie Scott Reed. I am Kellie Scott Reed, and I'm here today with Beth Mulcahy. I'm so excited to meet you. Thank you so much for joining us, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, thank you, Kellie. And it's wonderful to meet you too. I love your press and everything that you and Marianne and Tiffany are doing with it for authors. Very supportive and wonderful press. So thank you so much. My name is Beth Mulcahy and I live in Ohio, in kind of what's considered the greater Cleveland area, but really the middle of nowhere, sort of halfway between Cleveland and Columbus, Akron, Canton area. So I am a writer and I do mostly poetry, but I do some creative nonfiction, and I'm trying to write a novel, a historical fiction novel. When I say trying, that's because I'm having so much fun with like poetry right now and other forms of shorter writing, but I have that ongoing project. I just do a little bit of everything as far as creative writing. It is not my day job, however. So I'm an attorney by day and work in compliance. So
That's awesome. It's so funny. I do love your poetry. I think it's awesome. What is the time period that you like to write about in your historical nonfiction?
Okay, so the historical nonfiction book that I'm writing is based on the lives of my maternal ancestors. So the only reason that I'm writing historical fiction, frankly, is because that I decided I wanted to write about my maternal ancestors. So the time period is, I'm starting in the 1840s in Northern Ireland. So it's the potato famine. And some of my poetry that I have written recently has actually come out of that research. So I have a poem that was in Sledgehammer in December, which is called "I Have Something to Say About Potatoes." And that was kind of like a culmination of a whole bunch of research and imaginings that I did about the life of my great-great-grandmother. Because I just kind of immersed myself in trying to learn about her story, what I know of it, what I can imagine, what her life was like. And then it goes into Scotland in the late 1800s and early 1900s, and then into the United States, the 1920s and beyond. So it's like a huge undertaking because it's about my grandma, my great-grandma, and my great-great-grandma. And it's three different women, three different countries. Their stories are very connected. It's a lot of overcoming some hardships, immigration, poverty, and about just these tough women that inspire me so much. And I want to tell their stories. So that's what I'm working on.
That is so cool. Do you know well, of course, you know what town that your grandma in Northern Ireland is from? Because that's where my family's from. Like they still live there. I have in Garrison and Belfast is where they are.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So originally, my great-great-grandmother was from Dungannon in Northern Ireland. I can't think right now off the top of my head about sort of what larger town that was near. But yeah, and it amazes me because she was born in like 1844, which was prime potato famine, to a farmer in Northern Ireland, and she survived this. So I think that
so
alone
amazing.
is amazing. And I'm trying to figure out how, because when you read about the famine, you read about the millions of deaths and the immigrations that occurred, but they stayed and survived somehow. So I'm trying to sort of imagine that survival story.
That's incredible. Thank you for sharing that with us. Could you describe an early experience that you had where you discovered words had power?
Sure. Well, I grew up reading a lot. I read everything I could get my hands on, and I'm the youngest of 4 kids, and my siblings are kind of significantly older than me. So there was a lot of books in the house, and I read everything, even things I was probably too young to read. I think I read Catcher in the Rye at like 9 years old and was like just devastated by it, totally identified with the little sister Phoebe. And but yeah, I read all my sisters, Sweet Valley High books, probably too young, and just everything and anything, and just kind of fell in love with reading. And then also, I think letters early on kind of showed me the power of words and writing and language. So my grandfather was a writer, and he lived in Canada in the summers and Florida in the winters, but we were still close, and I saw him as much as I could, and he would write me letters. Since we didn't live in the same place, he declared us pen pals, and he would write to me. He was a journalist, and he would write to me when I was young, like 10 years old, about politics, and send me clippings of articles, about, some Democratic female politician that he thought was great and wanted me to know about it. And it just was like, wow, he's writing to me like I'm an adult about things that I frankly have no idea what he's talking about. I don't understand, but I'm going to go figure it out. I'm going to go ask my parents or ask him when I see him. And I just felt it was really powerful, the effect that his letters had on me and other relatives that, and different folks that would write letters. And my siblings wrote to me when I was raised Catholic, and you make a retreat. I think it was like maybe in 8th grade. And part of that process was your family members wrote you nice letters about what you meant to them and how much they loved you. And oh my goodness. So I'm an emotional, sentimental person. My family's not very emotional or sentimental. Wonderful, loving, folks, but just not particularly emotive. So when I got those letters from my older siblings and my parents, boy, it was so impactful for me. And I think of those kinds of things as really having realized the power of language and words.
Oh, that's really beautiful. That's really beautiful. My son went one of those retreats and we had to write him a letter. And I am not the most emotional person in the world. I don't know if it's Irish. I don't know, but I'm not the most emotive person in the world. So my letter was very jokey to him, but then at the end was very loving. He goes, "Leave it to you, Mom. It's all a joke. The whole thing's just a joke. Telling me how glad you are I'm gone," that kind of thing. But yeah, I love those letters. I think that's important. I think that's important to do for kids in general. All right. So what is your writer's kryptonite?
Well, so when I feel like really good with writing and in the zone, like I can be creative, it's because I have, and this might be sort of an obvious thing for everybody, but it's because I have the time and space to do that thinking and that just sort of reflection and pondering and sort of getting lost. I mean, I feel like you really poets have their heads in the clouds, right? Like if I'm in a place in my life, mentally, emotionally, as far as stress, where I can't get to that sort of relaxed state where I can really like look at the sky and appreciate the clouds and just imagine and ponder things, then there's no way, and I have a full-time job that's pretty demanding, and I also have 2 teenagers. And so like I have to fight for my my creative space and time. And luckily I do have a family that my husband and kids are very supportive of my writing and my creativity. And they honor that. But there's lots of obligations, right? And life gets stressful. And so if I don't have the ability to get away if I don't have the physical and mental space, that is just forget it.
Now, you're in Ohio. University of Dayton is where I wanted to go to school because they have an excellent writing program. Do they have like workshops and stuff around where you are?
That's so interesting that you mentioned Dayton, because I went to Dayton.
Did you really?
For undergrad.
That is a great writing school. Writing school.
It's funny because I didn't know what to do in high school. I didn't know what to major in. And my older cousin gave me this great advice. He said, I want you to look at your high school electives and see what what you were taking that when you had the choice. It was all English. I like took American Lit as an elective. Who does that? And like every writing class I could get my hands on, every single elective was English related. So I decided to major in English, and I had so much fun. And I took every writing class I could. And then it came time to figure out what to do next. And I just decided that I essentially didn't want to grade freshman composition and be a teaching assistant in the English department grad school, but I wanted to keep being a student. I went to law school. So that's what I did. And I really didn't write a whole lot, once I hit law school and started practicing law and then had kids and stuff. I really didn't write creatively for probably 20 years, and just have gotten back into it in the last couple. So. Wow.
Okay. Well, you hit the ground running.
But I'm not super close to Dayton, to go back to your actual question where I went on a tangent there. So I'm not very close to Dayton. I'm closer to Cleveland, Columbus, and Akron. University of Ashland has an MFA program that I'm kind of stalking. I don't know if I will ever get my MFA, but it's, tempting. I've got, like I said, a couple of teenagers who are going to be looking at college in a few years. But yeah. But they had a free poetry workshop out of Ashland's MFA program the other night, and I did it, and it was super cool. It was online. So, and there are I do a lot of, that's the other thing that would be kryptonite for me, is not being able to connect in community with writing. I do tons of generative writing workshops, any chance I can get. So there's a poet I love, Albert Flynn de Silver, who has a writing group called the Brilliant Writers. And he's out of California. Yeah, and I can send you the link. He's got a revamped website. I found him a year ago because I love the author Dani Shapiro. She has a book called, I'm looking to see if I had it handy. Okay, I'm going to plug Dani Shapiro's book because it's right here. It's called Still Writing. She wrote a book called Inheritance. She writes a lot of memoir. And I'm really fascinated by, creative nonfiction memoir stuff. And I like to read books about writing by writers because I find it really inspiring. So Anne Lamott.
Have you read Stephen King's On Writing by chance?
I have not read that one yet. So
amazing. And
is it? Okay, I'm writing that one down.
Even if you don't like the genre, even if you're not a writer, my husband's not a writer. He says it's one of the best books he's ever read. It's fantastic. Yeah. You really, it's, if you want to read about the process, it's pretty impressive. It's really wonderful. But I'm so excited. I wrote down what you told me because that's really interesting.
Yeah, Albert does a lot of, anyway, the point is he does tons of online opportunities for writers who come together in a supportive community. He gives generative prompts you can share. There's a whole online community. I found some through Twitter as well, Art and Hunter. They are out of Indonesia and have a great free generative writing workshops on Saturday. So I grab these things when I can. That's, grabbing space and time and writing creatively in community with prompts. I have gotten a ton out of those. And a lot of the stuff I've published in the last year has been right from those generative writing classes. So it's fun.
Oh, very cool. Well, I needed that because I'll have my coworkers, the co folks, they inspire me to write because they make me write. They say, Kellie, do this. And that's the only way I get to write it because I'm much more of a physical, I want to talk to people. I love communicating and I do well with writing, but I do need to be inspired by something or it's not there. If you couldn't write, what would you do to express your creativity?
Well, I didn't write creatively for all those years when law school and the practice of law and my babies were just sucking all the life and creative juices out of me. No, I did find that when I needed to, writing for me is very therapeutic as well. I use writing to process things a lot. So, and I think that over those years when I wasn't really writing creatively, I would still have a journal somewhere and I would grab it when I was going through something that I needed to process. But life was just so busy. So I got into paper crafting. Which actually I'm still super tempted to like pull out that because it was so just meditative. So, like, I don't know how to describe it, but like basically making blank cards with cool textured paper and shapes and like those fun scissors. It's just kind of doing whatever the heck I wanted just to make pretty cards. And I kind of got into that for a while, and that led into other crafting things. I'm not a particularly like crafty person. I don't have a lot of patience for things like baking and crafts, but when my kids were little, I was a stay-at-home mom with them for about 7 years, and I would get pretty into like the parent groups and the toddler story time, and like there was like felt involved and squirrels, and like I would do like the little story time and make interactive crafts for the kids. I got into that for a while. So
that's so fun. That's super fun. I'm terrible. I failed cutting in kindergarten, and I'm not kidding. I did not pass cutting.
That's
Ask these
fantastic.
guys. I can't. Everything I do is half-assed.
They graded you on cutting?
No scissors for Kellie.
You had to do certain skills, and I just couldn't get the cut. I couldn't cut a straight line. I've never done anything in a straight line. That's just the way I am.
I like that. That's good. Straight lines are overrated, I think.
What's the most oh my gosh, my brain just did that. What's the most difficult part of your process?
Oh, I don't know. I think that I think it can kind of vary for me what the tough part is. Like sometimes I'll struggle to get started. And I'll have to write like, so Anne Lamott in her book Bird by Bird coined the phrase the shitty first draft. And I find that is like so true and helpful for me, that I have to go into it not trying to like be perfect, but just a lot of times just you got to get out a lot of bad stuff that you're not going to use, but it's going to get you where you need to go. So sometimes it's hard for me to just get going because I don't like that. I don't like letting myself write crap, basically, because you sort of know it, like your internal critic or your editor is like, oh my God, it's okay, nobody's going to see it. We're going to hit delete. It doesn't matter. We're just trying to get somewhere. And so I think I have to really, sort of pep talk myself into that sometimes. But the other thing that I really am fascinated by like the short story, and I've never been confident or in my ability to write short stories. I haven't done it much, and that was one of my writing goals this year, that I want to learn that. George Saunders is an author who wrote a book called A Swim in a Pond in the Rain that came out last year, I think, and it is about how to write short stories. So he's a teacher at Syracuse University, and he teaches creative writing, writes short stories very well. And his concept is like, you want to know how to do something like an engineer would. You want to know how to make something, you take it apart and you figure out like what worked together, how it was done. So he does that with short stories, and it's super interesting and fascinating process. So he's got a Substack, which that he's doing right now about that same style he did in A Swim in the Pond in the Rain, where he takes you through short stories step by step to kind of help you either as a reader or writer understand like what's making it work, what makes a good short story and how to do it. But anyway, for a process for me, when it's got to be structured and you have to do it a certain way, and there's a formula and there's a right or wrong, I get really that's really hard for me. That's why I love poetry, I think, because poetry for me is really forgiving. I don't write a lot of poetry that's pretty, that's very strict as far as form and things like that. I'm more of a free verse person. It's interesting since my day job is compliance, so there's lots of structure. But when I'm doing the creative writing, I find it challenging if I have to sort of fit it into a certain box. But I still want to learn how to write short stories, so I'm gonna work on it.
It's hard. I mean, I like poetry because my thoughts are usually short. The things I'm a brief person. I have a point to say, I say it. And I really enjoy that. I have done some short story stuff, but I do wind up going, okay, now my attention is wandering. Like I don't even find my own stuff very interesting. reading, like you were saying, you're reading yourself like, is this really, who cares? That kind of thing. But I feel you when it comes to being a little more free in your writing than in your day job. My husband's in compliance. That's what he does for a living. And he's also a musician who writes songs. So I think there has to be some kind of balance, because being that rigid, creativity is needed for compliance. You have to be able to think a little differently to see where things are out of pattern.
Yeah.
But it can be a little like, oh my God, a spreadsheet, or oh my God, I have to make sure these rules are followed. So it's this beautiful little thing that you're bringing in with your poetry, where you get to be free in that, which brings me to my next question. What is something in your life that makes you feel free?
Oh, okay. So I did start doing, just in the last couple of years, since I've gotten sort of into writing and declared myself to my family, I am a writer and I'm going to be writing. I've started to do, when I can, these like self-imposed writing retreats where I take myself away for the weekend. It's hard to come by with family needs and things like that, but I do manage to get away for some little writing trips sometimes. And I have to say, going away by myself, where I don't have to worry if people are hydrated, or if we're doing what they want to do, or they're getting enough sleep and their phone is charged, or whatever, when you're not taking care of anybody but yourself, and you are able, when I'm in that situation where I only have to focus on me and I can do what I want, and I can spread my books and notebooks out all over the room, and just that's very freeing. And then the place that I like to go is it's also like a nature type place, where incidentally no children are allowed. So it's very quiet. And it is in Amish country. So I live kind of near Amish country in Ohio. It's in Millersburg, and it's called the Inn at Honey Run. And I think it's a lot for like more maybe geared towards for couples and romance. But I just go by myself, and it's very quiet and lovely, and take myself out to dinner while I'm there, and walk through the gorgeous woods. And that for me is the most free I've been feeling when I get to do that.
That's amazing. That sounds wonderful. That's awesome. And now, do you have anything you want to plug that we can put out there for you? Like your Twitter account, anything you've got going on?
Yeah, so I do have a Twitter account. What should I say? What the handle is? Or
the handle is anything you're working on currently that you want out there?
Sure. Okay. So yeah, I have a Twitter handle, which is at Beth Mulcahy, Mulcahea. And the EA are my first and middle initial. I'm actually an Elizabeth, but anyway, I have a link tree I made a website, but and then I have a link tree which has links to all of the publications that I have had in the last, let's see, I started submitting writing in May, and I've so that's, and yeah, so it hasn't been that long. It's not even been a year since I started subbing, but been having a lot of fun with that. And then I think that I'm hoping this year I will have a chapbook to plug at some point. So I have a manuscript that I finished, a poetry manuscript chapbook that's called Firmer Ground. And I have sent it out to places and some contests. So I'm just kind of waiting to see what happens. That's one of my goals this year, is to try to publish a book of poetry. And yeah, I think that's basically what I have going on.
That's so impressive that you just started. Fantastic work.
It's been such a blast. I mean, what I have found is that I'm so glad that I got back into writing. And that I've been just kind of able, at a point in my life where I've been able to sort of throw myself into it, because I'm passionate about it, and it makes me so happy. I just have so much fun with it. It's an absolute blast. So,
oh my God, that makes me so happy. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been awesome. Very fun. It's so great to meet you. We get to know writers through their writing, but it's really nice to hear the processes and just the the backgrounds and, find these connecting points. Cause I connect through writing, but I also like to meet people in person. It's kind of my favorite thing to find someone I enjoy reading and then get to meet them in person. It's like a dream. So that makes me very happy.
Oh, thank you so much. It's wonderful to meet all of you as well.
Thank you so much, Beth. And we'll be posting these weekly and I'll let you know when yours posts. A couple days
Okay.
before. Thanks so
All
much,
right.
Beth.
Thank you. Bye.
Have a
Thank you,
great one.
Beth.
Thank
Bye.
you.